So today we're going to talk about how we keep our inventory, how we store things.
Oh, the ever-present need for storage.
Yeah, we're running out of space for storage.
I prefer to store my jewelry pieces on humans who have purchased it.
Yeah, I prefer to store my pieces on people's walls somewhere other than my studio.
Rafi's tips for artists because he loves you.
Hola, you amazing artist! Today we're talking about storage and how I store my paintings because a lot of you guys have asked me, how do you keep your inventory? How do you store paintings? To be honest with you, I can't tell you whether or not this is the right way to store paintings because this is just how I store paintings. When I started my art career and decided that I was going to be an artist, if you're an artist, create art. That's what you do. You do art because you're an artist. And I understand the fear of like storing your artwork wrong because it might get damaged or something might happen to it. But in all honesty, like, you have to work with what you've got. If you've got a big location with a room that you could properly store your art, then that's awesome. But if not, then you probably will do what I do, which is store my art wherever I can store my art.
Yes, for those of us who don't have an air-controlled, vault-sealed room for our works, then you gotta be resourceful.
Yes, exactly. Now, you do have an air-controlled sealed room, which is your house. Why am I saying house like that?
Your house. What are you, from Canada?
Which is your house. No, that's not Canada.
Scotland.
It's alright. Your house, your apartment, wherever it is that you live, that may be air controlled. You may have air conditioning and heating during the winter, so that would be a place where you're going to store your art. So I have different size pieces that I store here, and so, well, let's get into it. Testing, because I'm walking around with this stick. So let us travel through this mystical realm known as my studio. Mine and Clee's studio. As you can see, there she is working.
Yeah, you say it takes up the whole entire studio.
Yeah, her studio part takes up the entire studio. I barely have any room to do anything. We're not here to talk about the lack of room that I have in the studio. We're here to talk about how I store my art.
The short answer is everywhere.
Pretty much. I store my art everywhere. Let's get started on the big pieces and where I store them. Oh, that's the wrong switch. Down this hallway, you can see that I've got a bunch of big pieces stored. You could probably see that I just have them stacked one on top of the other. I don't really have an issue with them. Well, sometimes they might stick to each other a little bit. Honestly, it became a pain in the butt because I would wrap them in plastic and then people would come to the studio to look at some art because they were interested in buying it. I'd have to unwrap them. And because I use that shrink wrap, I'd have to throw the shrink wrap away and then rewrap them. And I don't know. As long as you have them stacked where they're leaning and they have some space in between them, they tend not to stick. If you do decide to do this, be careful how you do it. Don't stack your paintings one on top of the other because just that pressure alone will cause them to stick to one another, and then when you go to peel it off, it might actually peel some paint or keep some of the gesso on the other piece. But even if that happens, I mean, you could touch it up and fix it up. That's never been an issue for me. This is our wall of fame, by the way, you guys. This is the wall of all the interviews that we've ever been in. Pretty much any newspapers, magazines, documentaries, film interviews, any interviews that we've been in, we make sure to frame it and collect it so that we remember that we are indeed badass.
Muy famoso.
Yeah, muy famoso. This is inside the studio, and what you can see here is my shelf of the smaller pieces. So all my smaller pieces, because I have them stacked so tightly together, these I do have wrapped in plastic. They're either wrapped in plastic wrap like this, or I have them in these plastic bags that I bought from Uline that help separate them. I like doing the plastic bags because if you do the plastic bags, then if a collector comes by and they want to buy some artwork, you don't have to like unwrap it, and you can just take it out of the bag and then put it back in the bag and put it back on the shelf if they're not interested. For my paper stuff, I actually keep them in these. I get all the wet paint off of here. God forbid I get paint on my bag. Alright, so obviously anything that I do on paper, I've got it stacked in here. I pretty much stack them in here until this thing is full. And then once it's full, I'll just buy another one and just keep stacking them in here. As far as like the paper products go, they're much safer being inside of a container. That way they don't get any paint on them. As far as sculptures, I've got this guy in this room. Some of my other sculptures, which I don't have listed online, are these guys up here on the fridge. I mean, you know, it's art, so just store your art around your house. Around your house. As you can see, I'm working on a bunch of pieces. Clee's working on a bunch of pieces too.
Yeah, I have 6 pieces going currently.
Yeah, she's got 6 pieces going, and I've got a bunch of pieces. Another good reason to find plastic bags to wrap them up in is if you're going to go and do shows, instead of wrapping them up in the plastic wrap. So when you're taking them there, you could have them protected in these bags and then take them out of the bags, do your show, and then put them back in the bag.
And you can send them home with shoppers in a shopping bag.
Yep, exactly. So that's why I got shopping bags, to protect them. Also, any works of art that I have hanging up around town that are for sale, I consider that storage as well. You know, so I have a few that are at a restaurant, at a real estate place, at another place, at another place. So there's a total of maybe 50 to 60 pieces that are out there that I don't have to store here because they are out there in the world. Why do you think storage of art is such a mystery? I remember when I first started creating the art, before I actually had a bunch of pieces of art, I was really nervous about where I was going to store it. Like, I was like, oh, I gotta store it in the right place. Of course, back then we were living with my dad, so
yeah, storing anything was a challenge there.
Yeah, dad would walk around after working on something covered in gasoline and in grease, and I'd find like fingerprints on the edges of things, like right by my paintings, and I constantly had to check my paintings to make sure that they weren't getting damaged.
Yeah, I stored my jewelry in a glass showcase at that time. There was evidence of his mischief on the surface of the glass.
Yeah, there was evidence of his mischief everywhere.
I think there's this whole stigma about our art, how you have to store it like in a clean room with like armed guards and stuff. Like when they show you museum storage with the white gloves and whatnot, it makes you feel like anything less will surely destroy your art.
Yeah, and one thing you got to keep in mind is that for the most part, your art is pretty resilient. I mean, I know that my art is resilient, so a lot of my artwork is designed to be able to take a little bit of a beating, because we have gone and done shows. So when you're doing like an outdoor market show, chances are the wind is going to blow the painting around, it might rain, there's dust, little kids might come in with ice cream and touch the painting. You gotta be prepared for all of that. So that's why I have a nice layer of varnish on there, and I already did a video on varnish, so if you guys are interested in that, go ahead and look for that. A lot of people are worried about paintings getting destroyed or whatever, because they're looking at a lot of these paintings that are like over 200 years old that they're keeping in these very, very temperature controlled vaults and like doing all of this stuff to keep it protected. But they're like 200 years old. A lot of them were created before there was such thing as air conditioning. They didn't sit inside. They were like hidden in salt caves, and like who knows what journey these pieces went on, dealing with mildew, dealing with weather changes, dealing with all kinds of things. And yeah, that's going to have a huge effect on the art itself. So I mean, unless you're like, you know, kickboxing with your art, or, you know, battling each other and using your paintings as swords, then I think your art will be fine.
And if you are doing those things, you should probably be marketing that, because that's a whole new genre of art right there.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine the provenance on that? This painting is done in acrylic on canvas and survived the Battle Royale of 2018.
When you're storing stuff, I think the most important thing is to protect your paintings from mildew, from humidity, from, you know, it being too hot or too cold. So just don't store them in an outdoor shed somewhere. Store them indoors somewhere, and I think you'll be fine.
And other than that, support the future job security of art restorers by letting them worry about it.
Yes. That way art restorers in the future have a job. And as far as keeping inventory, I make sure I photograph my art. I didn't do that so much in the beginning, so there are quite a bit of pieces that I don't have any photographs of. Nowadays, I make sure that I photograph every single piece and at least keep some kind of record of that. Other than that, I really don't have any other inventory tips for you. I'm probably not the best person to give advice as far as keeping inventory because I don't consider my pieces to be inventory, even though technically they are because I run a business. They're, you know, my babies. My babies. My babies. So that's it. That's all I've got on how I store my art and all that jazz. If there's a moral to this video, I would say that when you are running into storing inventory issues, figure it out on your own. Figure out your own way of doing it because everybody's place of living or studio is completely different. Your capacity for storage is completely different. So, I mean, what works for me may not work for you, and what works for somebody who has a huge space may not work for me. Just move forward bravely and don't allow yourself to not create work because you're afraid that you won't have any space to store it.
Yeah, if that one couple could make it work in their 400 square foot New York apartment, anyone can.
Oh my God, 400 square feet, and they had how many pieces of work? Like 50,000 or something?
I don't know. It was like one of the world's largest art collections.
Yeah, one of the world's largest, most expensive art collections, and they kept it in a 400 square foot house. I mean, they lived there. They didn't just store the work. They lived there and created hallways with artwork. So if they could do it, then you could definitely find a place to store your work. If you guys have any tips on how to store artwork, that would be greatly appreciated. We would love to hear from you. And also, if you have any questions for us about the art world or about life, or if you want to ask us any questions, just go ahead and leave those in the comment section below as well. And thank you so much for watching, you guys. You guys are so freaking awesome. I totally adore you. And if you like this and you want to watch more videos like this, just click right over here to subscribe. And that's it. Say goodbye, Clee.
Good day.
Adios.